All right. All right. Welcome to this edition of Racers and Rides. Today we're going to be interviewing Justin, checking out some of his cars, talking about RC sand drags and where the industry's going, where it's come from, kind of how we're at, how we've gotten to this point. With all the racing and it's growing fast. So we thought we'd feature a few racers and see how they build their cars and give some tips and tricks and tunes and go from there. So. Justin, tell us a little bit about your past and kind of how you got into the hobby as far as RC and how long you've been doing it for.
I've been in the RCs my whole life pretty much. I probably started when I was about maybe 10 years old. I got a old RC10 buggy from one of the neighbors and been hooked ever since. But I had a big break on RC when I was like maybe 17, 18. I probably stopped messing with RC cars, and then I started messing with them again when I was like probably 30, 29, 30 years old, and I had a truck still from back in the day, and I bought a new brushless motor, LiPo battery, Castle motor. I put it in there, I drove it, and I was like, holy shit, this is crazy,
Yeah, it's changed a lot since then.
Yeah. Way crazy power, and then it like reignited the fire in me. Because when I was a kid, I was pretty hardcore. Like I would take my car all apart and clean everything, and have it running as best as it could. Because I was broke, and I had to rig it and keep it going. But yeah, the LiPo batteries and brushless motors and all this stuff now is just.
Yeah, brushless changed the whole industry. I mean, I started on nitro.
Yeah.
Electric wasn't. I did electric also, raced locally in Huntington, but got into the nitro scene and was part of the nitro scene for many years, and then shelved like you shelved it.
Yeah.
And then you have a kid, and then you start pulling out all the toys again and start dusting it all off. So,
yeah, pretty much.
But so we're all kind of familiar with that same scenario. So,
yeah.
But and then. So I've been in the RC for a while, got that out. How did you get into sand drag racing, and how did you hear about it, and then what started getting you excited about RC sand drags?
Man, I went to my local hobby shop here in Huntington Beach, RC Visions, and one of the guys that works there had a car that he built sitting up on the counter. It was a Rustler. I remember it was a Rustler. It had a Traxxas Slash like ladder wheelie bar on it. Had Traxxas sand or a Proline sand paw paddles on it, and I was like, "What, dude? That's rad!" Because I love sand. I grew up going to Glamis and riding buggies around and dirt bikes and stuff. So I saw the paddles, and I was like, "Dude, that's badass." What's that for? And he's like, "Oh, it's for our sand drags here on the beach." And so then I learned about the event, and I had already lived here at that point for like 2 or 3 years, so I saw it on social media and stuff, but I didn't really ever think a whole lot of it because I just wasn't doing
So
sand.
how long ago was that you?
That was like 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
2020, and then I think like that day I came home and I automatically wanted to do like a long wheelbase, right? Like extended chassis. Like that was the first place my head went.
Follow the sand rail,
or dragster.
Dragsters, right?
Wheelbase is your friend, especially if it's rear engine. So I went home that day and I cut my short course truck in half and I stretched it out. I had some carbon fiber. I just buy sheets of carbon fiber off Amazon and clamp a straight edge up on it and cut it, and that's what I would use to extend my chassis. And that was the very beginning of 3S mod class,
Right.
So I built that chassis and I went to their races and I built it to go race in 2-wheel drive stock because there was no wheelbase limit.
Right, they didn't have rules back then.
So I went in there and I waxed a couple people the first couple of races, and then people kind of started complaining like, "Oh, that's unfair. He has a extended wheelbase. That's unfair advantage." I'm like, okay, like I get it. Like I'm a fair racer. I'm always about a fair race. So. But then they wanted me to race in unlimited category, which was big cars, 5th scales, 8th scales.
Right.
And then those guys were like, what the hell? This guy's going to come in with his 6, 7, 8 pound car racing our 30 pound cars. And I feel for them too. So I hit up the guy
advantage.
that was running the races, and I'm like, well, make a class for these, 3S modified chassis, and at first there wasn't enough cars. It was me and him were the only ones. Maybe one other guy had a stretched out car, but then more and more people started showing up with modified chassis and basically created the class of 3S mod,
which is now one of the busiest. It's the fullest class.
It's the fastest. It's the fastest and one of the most fullest class. I think we had 18 participants at one of the races. In
Yeah,
the 3S
we were about
mod.
18 in one of the classes there. So and that's not even a summer class. So
Right.
once the races in the summer kick in, that'll be a 20 plus. 25
car field or
it'll be a
something.
25
Yeah,
car
I'm really
class.
excited for that, dude.
Yeah,
I want some new faces, new blood.
And as people are building more cars and getting familiar with these classes, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to start having this was, so
Get the
people understood the
information
different
out.
class and they understood how to build these different cars because people aren't familiar with the difference in the classes and how those work. So so 2020 was about when they started the 3S class, and then
no, the 3S class didn't really start
until
like 2021, probably.
Yeah.
Late 2021.
I just went back through my old videos, and my first race that I went to, not as a driver or anything, just going there, just checking it out, was 3 years ago, February 4th, I think it was.
Oh, dang.
So that was 3 years ago when I first went to that race. So it was pretty crazy. I went back to those old
time
videos.
flies.
It goes by fast. Yeah, it goes by really fast.
Yeah.
So it's been 3 years since I actually kind of stumbled on it. Same way RC Vision. I think they had a flyer. I went in there. And my son got a rustler I got him a rustler for Christmas. And then we were looking for places to run. We always went to local bashing spots, and then went in there and went, hey, sand. That's the same with you. I was like, that's the way to go. You gotta go play in the sand. And we're
traction. You get really good traction in the sand with paddles.
Yeah. So, as far as the sand goes, what do you like about the sand racing versus, did you do any other racing as far as?
I tried we tried. So this guy was my neighbor for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
He lived 2 or 3 doors down. So me and him were racing each other every day. Sand, street. We did the street stuff, but the street cars, like I'm kind of OCD with my cars. I don't like to really beat on them. Like I'll drive the piss out of them, but I don't like to run them into curbs.
You're not a basher.
Asphalt just eats them up,
Curbs
so
we ruins your month.
We did a no prep thing just in parking lots and stuff, and there's just not really a good clean surface to race on.
Right.
And like we live at Huntington Beach and there's sand right there, so that was a major selling point. I wanted to go fast. I couldn't really do it with the no prep stuff, and the bashers, like I love bashers too, but it's not fast like these.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Go fast.
So and it was really just because it was right here in my town, and I have a tendency of when I get into something I just go full bore on it, and
which we will see today when we start looking at some of the cars. There's no holes barred. So what classes are you racing right now at the races?
So I race 2-wheel drive stock 3S, which is this car right here, truck Norris. I race 4-wheel drive stock 3S. That's all 10th scale. So 10th scale 2-wheel drive 3S, 10th scale 4-wheel drive 3S modified 2-wheel drive, and then I race the 6S 4S 8th scale and up class.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Out of those classes, the 3S mod is your favorite. Is that still your favorite class?
Yeah, it's my favorite just because my 3S mod car is like dialed in. You know,
right.
You can almost one hand drive it, and all my other cars are not lined out the way that car is. Like you got to drive all the other ones. The 4x4 car is really, it drives really nice, but it's not as fast as like the fastest guys. You know, for a long time, like I feel like Black Jesus was like the fastest car. I may have not won trophies with it, but out of the cars, if you were to just line them up and run them, for a long time it was like one of the fastest ones, and now that's not the case. There's people figured it out, and
it took a while to get to drive that car though. took a while before you dialed
Before
in,
I had it
before
lined
you
out,
had it
that-
lined
yeah.
out where it
Yeah,
was
once-
a fast car, but just getting that power down.
Yeah,
And-
back in the day when I had the homemade chassis and stuff on there, it was a handful to drive, like.
And talking about that as far as where it's advanced to, I know, Huntington, being kind of one of the early days as far as sand drags, and everyone's kind of learning it. These people didn't come from no prep, right? These were people that were just bashers by trade, and we
Yeah.
started racing in sand.
Yeah.
How was the racing back then versus how it is now?
Oh man, it was a lot more like for fun back then. The rules were not a lot more lenient. Like they would let a lot of stuff slide. It wasn't as serious of race. The caliber of car wasn't crazy. It was a lot of just a slash with some paddles on it and maybe a wheelie bar. Like when we showed up and started bringing stuff like this around, like everybody was like, "What the heck?" And since then, now you see the progression. Like all these cars have wheelie bars. They all got your paddles on them. They all have big ESCs, high KV motors.
And how's the driving style changed as far as when people were first racing back then to now, how they drive their cars and how they set up their cars?
Well, I mean, I feel like probably back in the day there was a lot more like kind of shenanigans, people crashing and running into the fence, running over the center, stuff like that. Yeah, it wasn't as serious because the cars weren't going as fast.
Well, mainly too, back then people were just hammering all the power down.
Yeah.
There's a driving style back then differently as far as racing goes. People were just send the power.
Right.
Right. As much power as you could get down instantly.
Yeah.
And that was, less control of those cars. Right.
Yeah, because in your head, as a builder, you want to try to pack as much power in there and get it down to the sand as fast as you can, and that's kind of like, I feel like I call it the rubber paddle theory, because with rubber paddles you got to spin them up really fast, and then they grab and take off, whereas these kind of like dead hook, so you have to tune your car to accommodate these big serious paddles because they don't balloon, they don't expand, they don't do the same things that rubber tires do. So that in itself has changed the driving style because all the fast cars have these now.
And then also I think no prep. The people coming in from no prep and getting some influence from the no prep guys that were racing that were tuners. Right. So now you've got guys that we've got paddles, we've got, technology starting to advance, they're getting more traction now, right? So you have to drive them differently, so that kind of falls along the lines of the no prep guys who are getting mass traction, right? You have to tune for that, right? And dial down your launches and, start pulling that power down.
Yeah, because with these big tires, if you just try to hit them as hard as you can, like you do with rubber tires, you'll just break your transmission, break axles, break pins, Yeah. Like you want to get it right at the very edge of you're about to break stuff, but you're not actually breaking stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. So
because that's just the caliber of all the cars now. Everyone now has fast cars. That little kid came and waxed the whole adult class. He was 8 years old or something with his Bandit.
Yeah.
I thought
underestimated. Underestimated. And sometimes it's just the way the chips draw, works, and the way people get eliminated. So
it's not always about having the fastest car,
Right. It's consistency goes a long way when you're talking about racing, and keeping off the fence, keeping
it
not
in the center, keeping it off the fence
is a big part of it.
Not jumping at the starting line.
Jumping the light, jumping the light's a big one. So. So as far as, I've seen a lot in the last 3 years since when I first started going until now. It's changed quite a bit, and the cars are getting faster. Granted, we got more tracks popping up now too. So it's interesting to see the whole evolution of, the hobby. It's changed. And, and as far as, what has been the biggest advancements that has kind of taken, the cars to the next step, and then what do you think is going to be where's the wall and what's going to help get it to the next step, I guess is kind of the question.
So
where's the evolution's kind of been.
I feel like there's a couple of things at play with that. So number one is just parts, right? Hard parts. Your axle, your transmission, your pins, all that. You know, I use all drag slash stuff because that's like the biggest, you know, 2-wheel drive kind of beefy stuff that is readily available, right. You know. But that stuff being even bigger and beefier and being able to hit it harder, you know. But it's also like it's a fine line because then everything's getting heavier, right. The car's getting heavier, you're adding weight, you know. So I think it's really gonna come down to tuning now. Yeah. Really tuning on laptop, messing with timing, messing with your throttle curve, messing with your launch delay on your remote, you know. That stuff is almost like mandatory now to be able to go.
If you're going to compete now, you've got to start. You got to start tuning.
You got to, you know, because that was like kind of a turning point, if you will, for me. Was when I built all my cars back in the day when I first did it, I tried to put the biggest motor, the biggest ESC, you know, caveman power. Just get as much power in there as you can. And
1970 Mopar.
Yeah, totally. Big block blown, you know, and big heavy parts, aluminum arms, biggest axles I could get, and like I still have a lot of those parts, but the power stuff is not the same. You know, it's a more refined power, smoother delivery, real high kV motor, you know, 6,000 plus kV, like a no prep style motor, you know, and running them. Those motors are supposed to be 2S, you know, but we run them on 3S, so they're hitting hard, you know, 80, 90,000 RPMs in the run, and it's hooked up the whole way. So
it's been interesting to see the evolution and like where it's going to go next. You know, it's kind of I know going from rubber to 3D printed was a big jump in traction in that wall. I mean, we saw that in Yuma at Matus. You know, there's a certain wall that hit on rubber. You know, and I think paddle evolution is going to change. I'm always looking for the next big thing. And that's, you know,
paddles and motors,
and that's going to be a big
and maybe evolution. Batteries. I mean, there's some pretty good batteries that are on the market that we're using, but for motors, you know, the go-to for 10 scale 2-wheel drive for us anyways is like a no prep style motor. Like this truck has a Castle 6400 kV. And that's like a 550 can size motor, but there's only so many of those, you know. Right. You can only get that size motor, so I think maybe something a little bit bigger that has more out back, you know, because that's really a big thing is obviously having the power right out of the gate, but then being able to whoop and turn on the after boosters out the back, you know. Right. So if you have that power in there available to be used, you don't have to use it right out of the gate, you know. But with tuning, learn how to roll that power in and use it in the back end of the truck.
And we're a little unique in Huntington because we're at 132 feet.
Yeah.
You know, versus most tracks out there are 66, a lot of 66 foot tracks, and that, you know, very few. You know, at 132. So we're a little unique in the sense that we have that extra time to roll that in. But even on a short track, you got to control that launch and then roll that in, you know, mid, you know, 10 feet out.
And you almost like if you really try and dial it in, you have to tune to the sand that day. Correct. You know? Right. If it's a hot day in the middle of summer, the sand's going to be loose and fluffy, you know, or if you get there in the morning, it's nice and damp and wet, and your car's hooked up on that stuff, you know. So you gotta learn when to use the power, and
that goes for a lot of tracks. I mean, you look at Matus and Yuma. I mean, it starts out wet, and as they get more and more passes, you know, that starts churning up, fluffs it up, starts drying up a little bit, and then you go groom it again, and then
comes out.
Those are a lot more challenging because they're wet in their track. You know, we're using all natural track. Where you know, they run a few rounds and then they groom the track and then they pull out the hose and let it down. So the next guys now are racing wet. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge in its own when you start talking about tracks. So, but let's get into a little bit about your builds and talk about. I mean, we got this one here. We'll start out. This is 2-wheel drive stock class.
Yeah, this is a 2-wheel drive stock basically just means stock wheelbase, but
Right.
this is truck Norris, I call
So
it.
go over some of the rules on two-wheel drive stock. We have stock wheelbase. Right.
Stock wheelbase, 3S battery, 1/10,
1/10
scale size.
Right.
Stock wheelbase is the stock wheelbase of a slash or a drag slash, which is 13.5 inches. This one's actually, I measured it the other day because I made this chassis myself, and it's actually 13 inches.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, I'm cheating myself on a half inch here. But yeah, so this is basically a drag slash, but on a carbon chassis that I cut out and made myself. But so this is all drag slash. It's actually kind of a mixture. I lie. So it's regular slash. These are Proline shock tower, regular slash length shocks in the front. But these are RPM like drag slash or bandit style arms. They're a lot narrower than a regular slash. And then the back is all drag slash. So it's aluminum STRC arms, drag slash Power Hobby axles, a Power Hobby aluminum case transmission for a Magnum 272, the drag slash transmission. It's got, I think this is a Extreme, I don't know, I built this thing a long time ago. It's carbon fiber rear tower. It's got a little carbon fiber kind of shelf that I made for the ESC to sit on.
And then what ESC are you running?
So it's a Castle Mambo Monster 8S.
Okay.
I pretty much have this ESC in all my 3S cars. It's kind of big and it's kind of overkill for how I do it now with these.
Dialing the power down.
Yeah, yeah. The Ghost. I would rather have the Ghost in all the cars right now.
Right.
But I have these. They work. They're just big, burly. They take the power all day long. But when that's in Black Jesus, I've been running in that car since I built it. It's the same ESC for 4 or 5 years now, and I can't even tell you how many hits I have on that thing. So yeah, they're just robust motors, and then it's got a Castle 6400 kV censored motor. Yep, censored is a big deal.
Censored's a big way to go.
Yep. And then we run on all the cars. For sand, we run a slippery eliminator, so it's just direct drive, metal spur, 32 pitch gears. Because with the big paddles, if you don't have that, you'll just burn the slipper clutch up or strip the plastic spur. So, but these things same as the ESCs, the gear sets. I mean, that's the same gear sets that's been on these cars for years now. So.
When you get a good, you get a good set, and it's, like you said, once you dial it in, and you get the power right, and you're not blowing too many. I know on the 4.6S you blew a lot of stuff in the beginning on that one, especially
on the 6S car, on the 6S car, you lined out.
Yeah, you blow a lot.
Just so much power, dude. Just blow the rear diff apart.
Right.
Yeah, but this car's.
What Castle motor would you say that one was?
It's a 1412.
Okay.
6400 kV.
Okay.
They sell it as a 2S, no prep motor, but I run on 3S, and just keep an eye on it. Make sure it doesn't get too hot, But for what we do, we pretty much race the one and done. Yeah, one and done. We're not doing 2 out of 3. Yeah, do a hit and then it comes back and cools off. But even doing a couple back-to-back hits like test and tune, it never gets over like 180.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good. Geared pretty conservatively, and then it's been kind of added on to and cobbled together over the years, but the wheelie bar used to end here, and then I added a second piece onto it, learning that a longer wheelie bar is better, more stable. Right. And then it's got little skags back here. Those are just some angle aluminum, and I kind of cut them up and made them so that kind of dips into the sand and acts as a little bit of a rudder. Rudder, right. Yeah.
A little rudder to that. Okay.
Yeah. Right. And then just, try to keep it lightweight and everything with the drivetrain I try to do real strong, because there's kind of 2 approaches to this. You could go lightweight, dainty stuff, that is maybe the car's faster for like 1 or 2 hits, but then you're going to break something. You're going to break an axle or one of those little parts. Where I try to set the cars up so they could do what they do all day long. You know, I don't have to worry about
Unless you crash or wreck.
it's like crash or wreck or hit something in the sand, right? But I mean, I pretty much maintenance these things after every event. I, at least blow them off and just kind of inspect everything. Maybe once or twice a season, I'll kind of pull everything apart and grease it and redo the diff and just make sure that they're tip top ready to go.
Awesome. All right, so let's take a look. Next, we'll pull down. What do you want to do next?
So let's check out White Noise, dude. Let's have Jack tell us about his build, because his build is super custom. It's all handmade stuff. My build, you could buy all the stuff to do it. This one's a little custom, but this chassis actually came from my buddy Monster Fab RC, and it was a Baja Bug aluminum chassis, and I just clamped it to a piece of carbon and scratched it out and cut it out in carbon. Nice. And it's 3 millimeter carbon, so it's pretty sturdy.
Pretty thick.
Everything else that I do is usually 2.5 millimeter.
Yeah, that's a pretty rigid chassis.
Yeah. Clean wiring going on, dude. My boy.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about White Lightning.
White Noise.
White Noise, sorry.
I like White Lightning though.
White
Lightning.
Lightning.
That's pretty
Good.
catchy.
Throw that one out there. White Noise. So Jack, let's talk a little bit about your build, and we'll go in maybe another one since we're getting long on time. We'll go into your background, how you got started. I know this guy got you started, but so tell us a little bit about White Noise.
Well, back when the 3S mod class was originating, me and this guy built these cars, built his first and mine second, pretty much sourcing pieces of carbon fiber and measuring it out, etching it, and then cutting it. But pretty much everything is Traxxas, Rustler, Slash, Bandit compatible parts, front end, rear end, pretty much everything, but every little piece has been sourced from different kinds of cars.
Scoured.
Yeah.
Scoured on the internet.
The Frankenstein of the cars.
Just for the custom build and aesthetic that I was looking for.
Okay. And then what are you running for electronics?
Electronics, pretty much running a Ghost RC ESC.
And that's fairly new for you, right?
Yeah, I just put that in. I was running the Mamba Monster 8S for a while, and that was the ESC that was taking a brute force of the lows I was putting on White Noise, but there's just a lot more tuning capabilities and finite detail stuff you can do with the Ghost now.
Right.
And that's kind of what I'm looking for now.
It's that no prep technology and that no prep knowledge.
Yeah.
Those guys
The
just
tuning
out
ability,
thousands of a second,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
The tuning software is a lot more suited for drag racing and what we do with these cars.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The better you can understand that and put that into your ESC and with what you're driving on and what you're driving, it's endless.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Every car's got its sweet spot. It's got what it likes. You could put all the same parts on the same exact car over here, and it's a totally different car.
They got their own personalities.
Yeah.
Every car has its own personality.
Yeah.
So it's totally true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then what are you running for motor?
Motor, it's a McLaren 7500 kV.
Okay, so you're running high kV then.
Yeah, high kV. The car is fairly light for what it is, I should say, but I have it properly balanced to where I have enough weight where I need it. 7500 kV, I can do what I need to, put enough power into it to get it out the gate.
Okay. Yeah. And then that gives you plenty of, down the track.
Oh,
to
definitely.
To pull that power in as you need it.
Yep.
As long as you can get it off, you got plenty there.
Yeah.
And that's on drag slash
arms
and
Yep, drag slash arms.
built on the drag slash
exactly.
training and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and didn't you do something?
Yeah, I'm even sitting on a little riser pad that you printed out for me back.
Oh right. Back in the day.
Just to get the chassis
right
The
Oh,
wheelie bar
pretty
closer.
much the wheelie bar closer down, but also I think a low center of gravity is crucial for like stability,
It is.
especially
It makes
when
a
you're
big
going
difference.
fast.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, especially if you're on a track versus our beach sands, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're on a track, dropping that to as low as you can to the front, and getting everything down is a huge advantage.
Yeah,
And that's why running those smaller wheels, which we just started making those smaller fronts, 100 millimeter instead of the 110s, to try to get that front down a little bit.
Mhm.
As long as we got a pretty good groom in Huntington where we're not having to hit some bumps,
Right.
it's perfect. Which we've been doing pretty good keeping the track groomed the last couple races, which
Yeah.
is great. That's
Yeah,
been a big
it-
help from Bash Maps, and
it
they're
helps.
greater.
It helps with weight transfer too, getting the motor and transmission up higher compared to the chassis. It helps set it,
Right.
set the back of the chassis into the sand. Like when the tires hook, it kind of
You see that
sucks.
drop.
It kind of sucks down and just,
Yeah, exactly.
It loads up.
Yeah. So, all right, that's good.
But yeah, but pretty much just kind of
Didn't you do something with your arms because it's mid motor? Didn't you use the left side arm on the right and the right side arm on the left?
Yeah.
To combat the toe.
yeah. So I had to mix match the arms. I actually had to flip them around.
Yeah, and then
But-
we just drilled their own holes. in
yeah,
the
and I
back.
had to drill holes for my sway bar and
Yep.
all
Yeah,
that stuff, just so my toe was 1 degree on each side. It was
Okay.
evenly matched and it wasn't off. But yeah, I had to do a little bit of customization here if you want to, throw that out there.
Yeah, because the drag slasher towed in like 2
Right.
degrees on the rear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
the
when
towed
you
in pretty
flip the
heavy.
transmission around,
Yeah.
then they're
Sit
sitting
on
like
the
this.
outside. Right.
Mhm.
That's not
exactly.
good.
Yeah, that's no good. Toe in's good. Toe out's bad.
Yeah.
So, all right, that was good. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, and then all right, let's take a look at so the brother of this one, Black Jesus. So let's take a look at Black Jesus then. All right, so right now we're gonna look at Black Jesus. This is the kind of where it sits from where it began. What 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Four.
Totally. It's totally
Yeah.
different car now. It's the same, same
Right.
same principle, but
Same principle, but obviously things evolve and change with technology and what you have available.
Yeah. Yep.
So, all right, let's walk us through this one. And this is also built on drag slash, which all your cars are.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I
makes it easy to keep parts.
yeah,
you know,
I have a
and-
bunch of Traxxas 2-wheel drive stuff,
Yeah.
so all my builds are pretty much Traxxas 2-wheel drive. But this one is pretty much, the strongest and best parts that I could find for
Right.
Traxxas. But this is a Super Speed Sandblaster chassis. It's 3 mil carbon single.
And you just switched over that last season, right?
Yeah.
In the summer.
Yep, last season I was trying to build my own chassis, and I was gonna do something just like this, and I literally, I was in the works of doing it. I had a guy that was gonna cut the carbon for me. I had everything lined up. All I needed to do was buy the carbon,
Mhm.
and the piece of carbon that I needed to buy was like $250 to
Right.
be that long. And he offered this chassis for $180. So I'm like, no brainer, dude.
Right.
Buy one already done, already cut out, ready to go. And
Already
at
cut
first
and
at first I was skeptical because it's kind of flimsy,
Right.
My other chassis was real rigid.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know. I didn't like the idea of it being flimsy, but then I ran it and it
Mhm.
drives like a dream. So I'm like, okay, there's something to it,
Yeah.
And then I started, doing more research and kind of learning. Real dragsters do that. They arc
Right.
up like that and help soak up some of the hit of.
Yeah, one of Mark
Power.
Vine's last videos that he posted, he talks about that and kind of the evolution of
Yep.
running a super stiff chassis versus having some
Have
flex
some give
and
there.
having some
uh-huh.
give and how they
Uh-huh.
tune those chassis and on the no prep. So a lot of that stuff just translates over
Yeah.
into the sand.
Yeah, this is mostly all. Well, the back half is all drag slash stuff, but the front half is kind of like Rustler. It's Rustler top plate, Rustler wide arms,
Wide arms. Yeah.
RPM
Mhm.
on wide arms. I've always had those because I used to kind of like wide, like off-road style, like sand car looking cars. But then I was learning more about what's fast. You want the narrower it is, the kind of straighter it goes, and the easier it is to control. But this works really good for what we do for some reason.
And the sand it works, you can go wide front, wide front, narrow rears.
Yeah.
That also translates and works. Especially on a rougher surface.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit more forgiving when the track starts loosening up on you. So
yeah,
with
this chassis being flexible, when it has the weight of the battery up here and it wheelies, it kind of holds the front end just barely touching the sand.
Yeah.
So I still have a little bit of control.
Yeah. Great. And you're running Mamba. Mamba.
Yeah, Mamba Monster 8S in this one with a real big cat pack. And I really don't need this cat pack now, but it's already kind of built into the car. So this is Mamba Monster 8S, big cat pack.
And for people that are new, maybe watching this video, learning how to get into this, and explain the cat pack as far as what does the cat do?
So the cat pack, the capacitor, is basically stored energy inside those like little batteries right there. So when your motor has a big draw and it needs that
surge.
burst, that surge, it doesn't pull it from your ESC. That's how you burn up ESCs, basically. Now with this motor here, I don't really need this big of a cat pack. I had this on here for another motor that I had, TP motor, but it's kind of built into the car now, and
it's not hurting anything to have it.
Yeah, I mean it is a little heavy.
Yeah,
but I actually just bought a Ghost ESC for this and a new, lot smaller cat pack.
Okay.
So I'm gonna.
And you're running TP motor in this one?
This is a R1 Works.
Okay.
Bolt tub motor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a 6400 kV censored. And I love that thing, man. It's got power for days.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't even turned it all the way up yet because it just breaks axles or pins before I crank.
So on racing, when you have that much power, and where do you start on that? I mean, obviously you're gonna dial that power down.
The easiest way to do it is through your remote.
Right.
You obviously can't really do it with a stock radio. But anything that has a throttle delay or some
kind of curve.
You can do it with a throttle curve too.
With a curve, it's a little harder.
Yeah, but a delay that you can set, like I use Radio Link radios. They're cheap and they have the delay in them, and they have either a 2-stage or a 3-stage. I mainly use the 2-stage, but you actually go faster by not spinning tires so crazy out of the gate. So if you have a way to control that. And the easiest way to do it is in your radio.
It's a launch control.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, so that's kind of the best way to do it. There is some stuff in the ESC, in Castle ESCs anyways, that you can soften the launch, but you kind of don't want to turn that down because then you're sacrificing power that you want.
Plus, you lose your ability to tune that during the race day.
Right.
Because you're locked in. You're locked into that where your radio. You can set your endpoints on the radio, right? Bring down your max percentage, right? And then slowly start turning that up.
Yeah. Right? So that's the two ways that I really adjust things on this car. Pretty much everything in the ESC is turned up.
Yeah.
Is all 100%, and then I turn it down from the radio with the delay or the endpoint. The delay is more of how your run goes. Your launch, basically. Yeah. The end point is what you got out the back, pretty much, is kind of how I have it set up. So
your ESC still has your timing, your boost, and all that stuff.
Yeah, all
that you put in there.
You put in there before.
Right.
So that's your tune,
That's your tune, right.
So that's in there as far as timing and boost and all that, and then just power management do from the radio. If you need to turn it up a couple clicks on your endpoint, because this guy's pretty fast,
Yeah.
I usually run the car in like about 95, 96%. The highest I think I've ran it is 99%. It goes all the way to 120% though.
Right.
So there's still a lot left in it. But it's like, you know, at that point you're just gonna break stuff every pass, and I don't want to break stuff.
Anyone new to watching, if you watch the races throughout, and if you watch the live, you'll see people tweaking their controllers. You know, they'll start out in the race and first runs, you know, and then as it goes on, you'll see people start messing with their controller.
Yeah.
Depending on who they're lining up.
Turning their power up, turning the delay down a little bit because the sand's getting looser.
Sand's getting looser, so start turning down that delay, turn up those endpoints.
And that makes it like a quick way to do it too. You don't got to hook your car up to the laptop.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
They do have the Bluetooth interface, so you can do it from your phone, but it's not the same. It's really hard for me anyways, to set stuff how I want to set it. You know, how I can do it from the computer.
Plus on the fly if you need to, you know,
Yeah.
adjust it quickly, especially if you're on a rerun or something where you're back on a rerun, or if you're racing 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
You know, now you run the first race and you barely squeaked by and won. Now we gotta crank it up a little bit.
Right.
We're going
It's
on
nice
rerun.
to have that power on tap.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
I'd way rather have it and not need it
Right.
than need it and not have
And
it.
I feel that most people are building their cars that way now.
Yeah.
They're not maxing out the power. Everyone has a little more power to give. It's just that the surface isn't allowing that to happen.
Right.
Right. It just
Everybody's
it's
learning
just-
power management now.
Right, exactly.
Because
Right.
they're
It takes
stepping
a lot
up.
to it. So where do you see the next evolution maybe with the black diesel? I know you said you're going to change out the motor next, right, on this one? Or
ESC.
the ESC's next.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. The
Yeah.
ESC's
So
next
I'm
on
gonna
this one.
I'm gonna switch to the Ghost. It's a lot smaller, so it's
Right.
lighter. It's lighter weight.
A little lighter.
I'm gonna ditch the fan on the ESC because I don't think it needs it for what we do.
Mhm.
I got a new cat pack. It's a little bit smaller, so I'll save some weight there. And really, that's it. Just try to save a little bit of weight. Just make it faster. I mean, that's all you can do. Like I could turn it up. I'm working on. I don't know. I've always used these Power Hobby axles that I use, but I have been breaking one all the time in the same spot. And the guy hooks me up. He gives me the ones that I broke. He'll swap them out for me.
Yeah.
But it sucks.
Those have been pretty
breaking
good.
axles.
I mean, those have been pretty solid.
MIPs.
I'm running those on Aiden's too. So.
Yeah, they're good. I mean, they're the best for the price that they are. They're the best ones that you can get.
Right.
MIPs are better, but MIPs are heavier and they don't use a traditional style hex. They use their own. It's like you have to get it from them. It's got a D slot in it that fits over the end of the axle with the set screw, and I kept on blowing those little pieces apart.
Yeah. We're seeing some improvements in that. I know Pinnacle RC, they're coming out
Yeah.
with their own.
Yeah,
Their own.
yeah.
Now.
There's a lot of
hard.
stuff coming out.
We're
now.
starting to see those now start to come out. The weak points.
Yeah,
You know,
but that's what it is.
weak points.
The gearboxes, the axles. So this is a Fastlane machine Mod 1 gearbox. So it has Mod 1 internal gears that are all hard anodized. So in my opinion, that's like the best gearbox you get for Traxxas 2-wheel drive. Because it uses a proprietary big diff. It's Mod 1 gears on it, and I haven't broken anything in that yet.
Yeah.
My biggest thing was pins. The little pins that go inside the hexes,
Right.
and the pin that goes behind the slipper eliminator. I would just snap
Start
those
sharing pins.
pins. Yeah. So I started. I ordered 2mm around by 10mm long A2 tool steel from McMaster Car, and just cut my own pins.
Right.
And I haven't broken one of those yet. I'll break the axle or break something
Right,
else, but
Like racing, you fix one thing and you make one thing stronger. The next weakest thing is going to give.
Yeah,
you know,
it just
it's
transfers.
inevitable. It just transfers.
Right.
Sometimes leaving that weak point, in
yeah,
there,
a sacrificial,
a sacrificial part that's easy to change.
Yeah.
I did this for years. I ran a T-Max club way back in the days. We're talking, 20 years ago. And yeah, we did the same thing, CVDs and built everything. But the center drives, I always left plastic, because those would twist out and those would be the sacrificial part. I could flip it over, drop
Swap
a
it
new
out
one
real
in there,
quick, yep.
put it back in there, and away
Yep.
you go. But it's a lot easier than swapping out an axle in the field or something.
Yeah, so I
makes
mean,
it-
just like what happened with No Prep, when it caught on and it got really popular and,
Mhm.
and people saw that people were down to spend money on it and do it, I would love to see someone come out with a whole rear machine,
Yep. I think that's
badass
coming.
transmission.
I think there's some people working on
Yeah,
that right now.
yeah, I mean,
We'll
there's-
see that
You
coming.
could do it if I had enough time to sit there and spend on it and You know, maybe had like some kind of a hobby shop as a sponsor that would say, okay, here, try out these parts. Maybe some big beefy axles off a monster truck, and start kind of mashing parts together, and you know, make a bulletproof big power something. Because I would love to be able to run like 6S on a chassis like this, you know. And I say run like not just one time, like run it, do hits all day long, like you can with this on 3S, but on 6S, a big power, you know, real fast.
Big power, big fun, but I've also seen 2S cars a lot faster than some of the high-powered 3S cars.
Right, so that's
necessary power doesn't necessarily equal speed.
That's the kind of
it's the blower hanging out at the top of the car, you know, because it looks cool and it's fun, but it doesn't necessarily give you.
That's like the other side of it. Like you can approach it like that, lightweight, super high RPM, you know, high strung car.
Right.
But that is definitely gonna break something faster than you know, heavy duty, blown big block power. Like, you know, and I'm not saying like, I mean, those cars are badass, but that's just not
it's a different style.
Different style, not how I've learned how to do it. You know,
exactly. It's a different style of racing.
Yeah. I don't really like working on my car on the beach either. Like, I'll do a gear change or a tire or something, but I'm not gonna take the transmission off and rip it apart on the beach. You know what I mean? Like, I'll just come back to the house and do it.
And that's why no prep guys have come over to sand and love it so much. You know, I mean, there's not a lot going into it. That's what last year at March Madness, these guys, this is great. I'm gonna warm my tires, prep my tires, swapping tires out. I'm not, like, what do I do with my time in between these classes? And they're just sitting there walking around chatting. Just
I'm pretty lazy, so I don't want to do like a whole bunch, you know.
And sometimes if it's not broke, don't fix it. You know, I mean, tearing stuff apart and putting it back together, tearing it apart, putting it back together, you might end up messing something up, or you know, if it's working and it's winning and it's racing.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of recipe, if you will, I've just been maintaining it. If something breaks, I'll replace it. You know, same part, just replace it, because everything's pretty solid. Like, the axles break every once in a while. You know, I replace the pins or little hinge blocks, and just keep an eye on everything. You know, like.
Yeah, bearings.
Make sure all your screws are tight.
Make
sure your bearings are tight.
Make sure your bearings are clean and getting the sand out of them, and that's a huge part of it too.
Your motor too. So I had sand all inside my motor.
Right.
And the iron of the sand actually went to the magnet, and it was in there like. So I took it all apart. You know, got it surgically clean, and then I used black silicone when I put it all back together. Seal up the end cap and try to
sand gets that really fine sand gets everywhere. It's hard to
it was on that magnet good too. I had to get a rag and try to.
So talking a little bit about tires, because it's kind of been the evolution of tires. We've tried different tires. So a little history on the tires. This isn't a heavy OKRC product tire spill, but the tires kind of evolved because of Huntington, right? And 3 years ago when I came down here, everyone was running rubber. I printed a tire, made a tire, put it on my son's car, and everyone was like, this is cool, But Justin came over and said, this is what I've been looking for. So he was like, he was the first person to really run the 3D printed tire, and kind of evolved from, from Justin running them. Because he's like, the tires I knew were the weak point and always needed to be fixed because the rubbers were blowing, they're expanding, everyone's just fighting, zip tying their tires.
Yeah, that was the ceiling.
That was the
rubber tire.
Right, that was the wall that everyone was hitting. They couldn't go any faster because no matter how much power you put to it, it's just, you're going to blow tires.
Yeah.
So, and it's evolved a little bit. The paddle itself has kind of stayed the same in a sense. We've gone wider, we've gone narrower. You're kind of sticking to 130 by 70s, I think, is what you're running. 80s. These are 80s.
Yeah.
So 130 by 80s.
Yeah.
You have 80s on all? I think you have 7. You have 70s,
70s on this guy. Yeah, 4x4.
So yeah, the 130 by 70s, 130 by 80s, everyone has their kind of preference. And just like motors and ESCs, it's a personal preference. Some people like split tires, some people like the straight.
Yeah.
Every car runs a little different.
Yeah.
If you want a little higher RPM, you go to a 70. A little less traction, a little more spool up, and a little bit more spin versus the 80. So
you want to save parts,
Right, you want to save parts.
That was why I did it on the 4x4 because I kept blowing the rear diff apart.
Right, tire's a little too wide.
Yep.
The next thing we can do is start shortening paddles, which in Huntington, shorter paddles is not necessarily good, and we don't really know if that's a good thing on some of the track surfaces.
Right.
I do know,
We have to
looking at
test
the
it.
witness lines on the after you run at Matus all day, you know, we might see half a paddle actually.
Yeah,
you know, dig
barely
in.
digging
Right,
in.
we're seeing like half a paddle depth, but that extra paddle's there if you need it,
Yeah.
right? And is it really using all that paddle in the beginning? You know, I do a lot of studying of slow-mos and looking at the paddles and how the car just sinks.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe, you know, it's not, you know, staying up there, but on the launch it's helping, and then it just rides those paddles at the top.
Yeah,
So,
because it's kind of a taller gear ratio when it's on the very tips of the
Exactly.
paddle. Just
yeah. And I have kind of my idea, I think, of where the paddle needs to go next and what I think is holding the paddle back and holding the car back. And that's what we're doing some prototype testing and stuff. I think I kind of have an idea, you know, what is keeping them from going a little bit faster. So it's just going to take trial and error. And what works in Huntington might not work in a track.
Yeah.
So that's where the challenge kind of comes
yeah,
from.
when I approached you about these tires, you know, making them, like I said, rubber tires was kind of our ceiling. Like, anyways, that's what I felt. I couldn't get any faster. You
Right.
know, we were as fast as we could get, and the tires were just not holding together.
Yeah.
So,
The RPMs were getting higher and higher.
yeah. So I wanted to do like a top fuel dragster kind of approach to it, where a big, huge tire, a
Right.
bigger tire is going to hook up harder, you
Right.
know, but. You know, when we first did it, we did big, huge, and then
We
I
did
kind of
huge
learned, like,
tire.
okay, that's too
Right.
big.
Right.
Now-
and
now-
we still have one of those, which we'll feature on the next
Yeah.
car. But when we look at the next car, we'll look at tires and how big we can actually go on a
Yeah.
tire.
Yeah, I wanted to get silly with it just because I love the low slung, big old meats out back, skinnies in the
Right.
front. I just love that, and
Yeah.
so it was kind of double sided when I approached you, because I wanted them because I wanted some bigger diggers, you know,
Right,
like some
yep.
top fuel sand dragster looking tires, but I also knew that I wanted something that wasn't going to expand, and that was the big deal. Was, you know, when the car would take off, and back then the track used to be real rough, so it would kind of bounce like this,
Right.
and when the right side tire would hook up and it would diff out and
Spool up
send
the
power
tire.
to the left tire, then that tire would grow, and then basically your gear ratio on that side of the car would get taller, and that would push you.
Right. As soon as it comes back down, and it's just
Right.
it's
So
broken.
we had plenty of power,
Right.
but trying to keep it composed and get down the lane,
Mhm.
get down the lane, you know. So that's why I say back then the races were a lot crazier, because
Right, that's true.
every car was on rubber tires
Yeah.
doing that,
and
you know,
blowing tires. too.
Right.
Yeah.
diffing out, blowing tires off, blowing the front tires off on the
Yeah.
4-wheel drives.
It's fun
you
to
know,
watch.
Now, yeah, it is fun to watch. But now, like, you know,
It's rodeo style.
probably 90%, if not more, of the cars at Huntington all run these tires because they work.
It took it out of the equation. It took one problem completely out of the
Yeah.
equation, so now you focus on something else.
Yeah.
Right. And it just
Yep.
now you got a consistency. It's all about consistency.
Right.
You know, and if you get a rubber tire that's consistent, you know, and you don't have those issues.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
belted tires were doing good, but they're still blowing the belted tires off. They might not expand, but they still separate from the rim.
yeah.
So as soon as you get a little tear from the rim, the glue breaks loose, and then
Sand gets inside
sand
there,
gets inside
throws
of
it out of balance.
Right,
and-
exactly.
yeah.
So and we've learned. I mean, from the paddle tires from the beginning 3 years ago till now, it's you know, the bones are there, but it's changed
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah,
we,
the
we
T-lock,
broke them. We
the-
broke
the-
them in the beginning. The
the-
materials.
Yeah, the hubs. We were
Right.
breaking the hubs
We broke the hubs out of the center, which still happens.
Spinning the hubs out. That was
Spinning the hubs
pretty
out.
badass, dude. I
Yeah.
felt like
Yeah, we spun the hubs
that was
out.
cool
in
that
the
my
beginning.
car could do that, you know?
Yeah, we twisted hubs in the beginning, which for the most part, it's it's worked out now, or it's not
Yeah.
as much of a
And that was
problem.
also with the TP motors, you know, which
Right.
is a whole different kind of
low
tune
torque.
and style
Right.
of racing. This is more of a smooth, refined
Right.
power band, you know,
Right, exactly.
more of a like a turbo car
Mhm.
where it has to build up the boost versus
Yeah.
like a blower car where it's right out of the hole,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and that saves on all the hardware. You know,
Yeah.
that saves on everything. So
Yeah, and it's actually faster, you know,
Right.
because you're not just blowing the tires off
Right.
for the first
Exactly.
30
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah, exactly. Waiting
Yeah.
for them to hopefully hook up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
awesome. All right. So last class, 4.6S, 4-wheel
Sure.
drive.
Yeah,
Alright.
four-wheel drive.
4-wheel
4.6S.
drive. We have 4-wheel drive.
I got
2.
2 cars left. Yeah.
All right, we'll just go ahead and film them and we'll cut them.
All right.
So, all right, next
Is that
car.
Is that rolling?
next car that we're gonna take a look at here, and the build is 4-wheel drive.
Yep, 10 scale 4-wheel drive.
10 scale 4-wheel drive, still on 3S.
3S.
All right. So, talk a little bit about this car, and let's get under the hood.
This is skid mark right here. I call it, just because of the color. It looks like a skid mark in your underwear. Try to put funny names to all the cars, you know.
Yeah.
Clever
names. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of controversy about this car running the Mohawk styles up front
Yeah.
and paddles in the back being 4-wheel drive.
Right.
But it works.
It works. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a slash 4x4 based car. It's obviously an aftermarket carbon chassis, but it's all slash 4x4. You know, arms, diffs, axles, bulkheads, bell crank. Pretty much the bulkheads, and then the center drive and everything is all slash 4x4.
And Mamba X.
Yep, Mamba 8S, just like all the other cars, and then this one has the Ghost 4300 kV motor. I just put that motor in right before the last race, so I'm still learning how to use it.
Yeah, 4300.
Learning about it, learning what it likes for timing and how hot it runs and what kind of RPMs and gearing. I'm messing around with gearing still a little bit, trying to get it up in the RPM range a little bit higher. But same big cat pack on this that I have on Black Jesus. Again, I probably don't need this big cat pack for this motor, but I had a big TP motor in here before, and those things are power hoggers. So and then we didn't talk about this yet, but
we talked a little bit about the connectors.
QR8s, you know, on all the cars. Big battery connector. You want to get that current out of the battery into the ESC and into the motor, basically as quickly and efficiently as possible during a pass. So that's a key component to, you know,
downsides to the bigger connectors. Is there a downside to those?
They're heavier.
Right.
They're a little bit
pain to solder.
Right.
Yeah. And they're kind of you got to work at them to get them plugged in and unplugged. But no, those are kind of a must for this recipe with the big printed paddles, high kV motor, big ESC. If you were to have like a EC5 or a, you know, what's the one that you like,
XT90s,
it will just melt them.
Right.
It will melt apart. You know, it can't handle the amperage flowing through it. So
what kind of amps are we pulling on? Have you done measure?
Yeah. So it's I can't say for sure because the interface for Castle links, it only goes up to 378 amps. Right. That's as high as the scale goes, and this pulls more than that.
Right.
But you don't know how much more. I've heard that these ESCs can take up to like 400, 500, 600 amps. But obviously they do have like a limit. But for this motor, this is the 4300 kV. It's nothing for that ESC. Like that's why I like those ESCs. They're just beefy. They're robust. You know, they'll take hit after hit after hit. You know, you'll break something before the ESC is too hot. I probably don't need that fan on there, but this car originally when I built it to be like a Baja Bug. Four-wheel drive Baja Bug. That's what this is all about. This is like an engine cage, like a Baja Bug would have. But then I put paddles on it and raced it, and it was really fast. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got another car for another class, you know.
And talk about the Mohawks up front. Did you play around with different tires?
So I did. When I very first started racing it 4-wheel drive, I used to run Power Hobby Roosters rubber tires,
which everyone pretty much did.
Yeah, those are like
belted.
In my opinion, the best belted, you know, paddles you get. That was before Proline released those ones.
Right.
So I did try it with 4 paddles, and it was all over the place. The front would grab and track, and now back then the drag strip used to be all chopped up and rough. It wasn't smooth like we have it now with our.
And 4-wheel drives dealt with a lot of expansion on those front tires too.
Yeah, not so much on these.
Not on the Mohawks,
because
but on the regular
on the slash 4x4 because it's a lock center diff.
Right.
what
Oh,
the
right.
expansion that you see on the
Right,
on
it's
the
an open
6S
diff.
cars
Right.
is an open center diff,
Open diff.
so it sends all that power to the front wheels.
Right.
And then what? But
Right, you don't run into that.
but on 4 paddles, I didn't like how it drove. It was all over the place.
Yeah.
Like this, dude, it's on rails. You steer it, it steers right where you want it to go. And my theory on it is the advantage that you still get of it being 4-wheel drive is the gyro effect of all this stuff up here spinning. These tires are still spinning forward, still pulling you along. It's a little bit different gear ratio because the back tires are a little bit taller than the front. So that's another reason why I like the smooths, because then it doesn't really matter.
Right.
You know,
Skids across.
Skids across. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but no, this thing hauls the mail. It's
yeah, we'll try some skinny, short paddles up there and kind of see what we.
Yeah, I do want to play around with those V-tread tractor looking ones
the
that
spades.
because those are pretty cool.
Yeah, we're working on a couple different things for 4-wheel drives because it's been kind of the the missing tire in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Some people run splits.
Right.
We run a small split tire up front.
Yeah.
That helps it turn.
Yeah.
Doesn't grab it as much.
It's definitely a topic of debate. You know,
is. It's a big debate on
the best way
four-wheel
to go.
drive.
But you look at Juan's car, which is the fastest 4-wheel drive that comes to our race, and he runs little tiny short paddles, rubber paddles on the front, and they seem to work really good for him. But
yeah, he's testing out the spades now. On the front.
I think once I get my tune figured out, I should have what it takes to hopefully pass it. You know.
Right.
But honestly, he's the reason that I built this car and I started racing this car, because he was fast. I'm like, man, that looks fun. Like, he's a fast guy. I like racing fast guys, and I've never like beat him all the way to a championship or a trophy, Yeah. I have beat him in a couple of races here and there, but he's always a little bit faster. He's the one, like, I've had probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 different motors in this car, trying different stuff, trying to get faster because of him, because I wanted to beat
He's
him.
very meticulous, he's got that spreadsheet.
It's all about testing.
It's all about testing.
Tuning, dude.
You can't just go out there and race. You got to tune it. You got to test it. You got to see what works.
You got to pull data and really be meticulous about it. And I don't do that. I do a little bit, enough to kind of get by, but not as much as he does. Like, he deserves.
You're being forced to now.
Yeah,
the other guys are coming
dude.
in
If you want to win, you want to stay with the
Right.
fast guys.
Right.
You got to get with the times, And I'm excited about it. I'm kind of like caveman style, old school. Like, I don't really do computers and all that, but
it's still a fun way to race, and that's how
Yeah.
When you start, that's the way you race.
Well, that's
what
in real racing, that's at the top level. It's a tuner's race. All the cars got basically the same stuff going on, the same amount of horsepower. But it's all about how you apply it, how you use it.
It's NASCAR with restriction plates.
Everyone's
Everyone's got the same cars.
Basically, basically.
So, right. No, it's definitely, everyone learns from, the one thing that's nice about, RC sand drag racing versus no prep, and I'm not real familiar with no prep, just going off of when I've talked to people, everyone shares a lot of what they do, and, the sand is the great equalizer, right? You can have exactly the same tune, the exact same setup, take 2 cars, set them next to each other, 2 different people driving and 2 different people's setups, and it's a completely different car.
Yep.
So the sand is fun in that aspect. It really just evens the playing field a little bit. So
and it's easier than no prep racing as far as, like, if it crashes and flips, it's on sand.
Right.
It doesn't really. Yeah, you might hit the fire pit or hit the
Yeah.
wall or something, but you gotta be messing up pretty bad for that to happen.
Yeah, don't hit the fire
I
pit.
can't say I've never done it.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's not forgiving out there is the fire pits.
Yeah.
So, but okay, awesome. All right, so pretty similar setups. I do see a pattern. When we start looking at each car, there's definitely a pattern to kind of way you build it and the parts you use, and it all makes sense. If you keep a lot of stuff standardized, it makes it a lot easier to work on.
It's kind of my recipe that I figured out that works.
And you know it, so
I know it.
Stick with what works.
I'm still learning about it, but I might go to a Ghost ESC in this car. I hate buying stuff that you know, it's like this thing's already fast as hell. And,
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
You
like,
haven't maxed it out to try to upgrade it.
Right.
Right. And that's what I always tell people.
Right.
Like,
You can't just throw parts at stuff.
Right.
And
Exactly.
think it's gonna make it
Right.
faster because that's not the case. You
Right.
know. And I've
Max
spent
out what you have.
I've spent probably $10,000 on stuff. You know,
Right.
trying to figure out like, oh, okay, this works.
Right.
You know.
And that's racing. You know,
Mhm.
that's a lot what racing is. But
Mhm.
again, you know, it's especially people coming into the hobby don't need to be, you know, turned away and, you know, and scared because
Yeah.
it's not
You don't
necessarily
have to
money.
have-
You don't have to throw a ton of money at it. You know, you
Yeah.
get what you can get, you run it, and you max it out. You
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
you tune it to the maximum that you can get out of it, and then you find out what you need to do
Right.
to increase
Yeah,
that
and
speed.
just chassis setup, you know, like
Mhm.
you know, your ride height, your wheelie bar clearance to
Right.
the sand, that has a big part to
Right.
do with it too, you know,
Yeah.
because
You can learn a lot by studying the launch, the car, the paddles. You know, if you go
Yeah,
back
if
and
you
look at
get-
your slow mos,
get
and
a
you look
video,
to see
slow-mo,
you get your video.
Oh, yeah.
You know, one of those tips that you know a lot of people talk about. And they talk about this here when this comes down, but your wheels, your front wheels should not be lifting off the ground when you're launching. Right. The rule of thumb is if we look at this here. The front wheels should not be coming off the ground or start lifting off the ground until this wheelie bar gets back to where the rear tires
yeah,
were started to go.
yeah,
At
16,
that point,
18 inches,
right,
whatever
exactly.
that is.
Depending on your car setup,
Yeah,
those wheels should not start to be lifting until we get to that point. When it lifts, it's just teetering. It's not like if
right,
you
it's
launch
trying to
too
climb-
hard,
trying to climb the
yeah,
ring gear
and you're
instead of go
and you're
forward.
bouncing off of your wheelie bar, you're unloading your rear wheels at that point, right? And then that's going to cause the hop. It's going to cause it just to start. It's going to start chattering all the way down
Yeah.
the track.
Yeah,
So-
everything kind of has to, it all has to play together. You know,
Yeah.
you need to have a long wheelie bar. You need to have a lot of power. You need to have a delay in your remote. And
Mhm.
you need to be able to dial all that stuff in to work together. You know, so that on your launch, when you whack the throttle, it doesn't give it full, 120% right out of the hole and just blow the tires right off.
Right.
You know, it rolls the power in nice and slow, get you rolling, and then whoop,
Right.
turn the afterburners on and get after it.
Controlled chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a fun one to watch. But it's also, as you bring on more classes, then that gives the more the challenge. Because now you're
Yeah.
learning something new.
Yeah, I
And-
like people to be creative. You
Yeah.
know, like all the cars that I have are old. I built them all when I was super on top of it, and they're kind of like, I changed motors and gears and stuff like that. But for the most part, they're the same builds, and like I want to see new.
Yeah.
I want people to do what I did when I first started and go cut stuff up and
Right.
get creative and
We're seeing manufacturers now come up with specific like Supa, and then you've got 5-star.
Yeah.
And you got Morbo. You got
yeah,
these
that's
guys.
awesome.
You got these guys that are coming out with
Yeah.
purpose-built,
sand drags. Yeah, that's
and-
awesome because none of that
Yeah.
stuff was available. Like when I
Right.
built all these cars, there was no information anywhere
Yeah.
about what to use, what
No.
works.
No. Right.
Like
Yeah, even searching the internet now, you start searching, you don't find a ton of
Yeah.
information out there.
yeah, everybody's kind of
what the-
secretive about
Yeah.
their stuff. Nobody really wants to.
Which is what we're hoping that this series, of looking at people's rides and talking and kind of getting some of those pointers, I think is going to be good.
Totally.
And it'll also help introduce people into, the hobby. And
Yeah, totally.
They're really looking to get started in it.
Yeah.
You've got people
Point them in the right direction
Right.
and show them because
Yeah.
like I said, you don't have to have crazy stuff like this to go out and race and have fun. You could take a box stock car and throw some gears and some paddles on it and a wheelie bar and go out and
Yeah.
could
have
potentially
fun.
win.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's not always about having the fastest, craziest
No.
car. I'm just like
Yeah.
a crazy guy, so I build myself up like
A
this.
lot of times
but-
you just wait for the big guys to just put it into the fence, that
Yeah.
overpower.
Yeah.
And then you just
Oh yeah, and
Cruise
I've
right
done it
down the
100
center.
times. I've done it 100 times. They've
Right.
lost to
Yeah. Yeah, to a smaller car.
a
Exactly.
more stock car.
More stock car, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and we have the classes for those, obviously. but-
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. So we've got one more car to look at here. So we'll.
Oh, it's 6S
that's
4S car?
6S. So we'll take a look at the 4S.
HellRaiser.
All right. So so let's talk a little bit about 6S class. This one is the HellRaiser.
HellRaiser is this car.
Alright.
Yep.
So this is running on 6S, or are you running on 4S?
Last rate's around 4S.
Okay.
This has a pretty high KV motor in it, and on 6S it's just too much power.
Right.
I built this one back in the day with my, caveman power theory of just throw as much at it as it will fit.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely still needs some lining out, but it managed to get a trophy last race. It's fast. It's stupid fast. It's just figuring out how to get
Keeping it together.
Keeping it together. Yeah, I love the big huge tires, but they're honestly they're too big for it to really go super duper fast.
Yeah.
They will work, but I think some skinnier tires, a little bit less traction, and then I could use probably the higher power and
Right.
because
A little narrower tire. That's,
Yeah.
That's pretty much. That is the widest tire right now on any of the classes aside from fifth scale.
yeah.
I mean that's a fifth scale wide tire almost.
Yeah, it's stupid wide.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest
It's
tires.
like I think it's 95 millimeters wide or something like that.
93.
93.
Yeah, I think it's 93 millimeters wide.
Yeah,
I
and
forget the
that's-
overall diameter.
that's just
of it,
my-
but it's-
my,
I have to look at my notes, but
My brain, I like that look. The big fat meats in the back, little skinnies in the front, and I actually had this thing running on 2-wheel drive for a long time. Trying to figure out make it work because I just thought that was cool. Big car, 2-wheel drive, fatties, But I put it back to 4-wheel drive, and that does help keep it kind of sucked down in the front and wanting to go straight.
and that took a little bit of the strain off of the rear end. So it's
yeah,
not as
exactly.
much
That to
people
kind of
and stuff
split
from
the
blowing
load,
up.
split the load up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is a Arma Typhon on a Arma Mojave carbon chassis. So it being an A-scale race buggy, it steers real fast. It's real twitchy because it's made to go on a track. So it's not really the right base platform. If you wanted to build the perfect car, it's not really the right one to use just because of the front end geometry. It's got a lot of caster in it, and it's just not great for drag racing. When it goes super fast just because it's got crazy stuff in it. But I'm kind of determined to figure it out and make it work.
Well, that's the challenge.
It's got potential. This motor is it's actually more of a speed run motor.
Right. So we've got the Mamba X again. So
no, this is
I'm sorry. That's the
XLX2.
Oh, XLS2.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the biggest Castle ESC that you can get. And this is a TP motor in this one. This is a 4070.
It's a big cam.
3930 kV. So it's almost 4000 kV.
Right.
So that thing on 6S is crazy.
Right.
Crazy. I was just blowing the rear diff apart.
Right. Yeah.
So the problem I'm having with it on 4S is it can't spin the motor, fast enough out the back end. It's perfect for the launch. It's a lot more manageable.
What's topping out?
Yeah. So what I did is I put a bigger gear on here. I went from an 18 to a 21, so that'll bump me up a little bit because it's hardly sipping amps. It's pulling some, but it's got a lot more there if it needs it.
So you won the last race. Did you win it by? Well, I mean, did you squeak through, or do you need more, or do you think?
I kind of squeaked through. I know Johnny's 6S car is real fast.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel comfortable. I need way more than everybody else to feel comfortable. So, and it's got it in there. It's just.
So who did you go in the final against? Who were you in the final with on that one? Do you remember?
Justin. Dota did.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it was Justin.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
We'll see some here.
That'll go through.
I don't remember, to be honest. When
don't
I'm up
remember
there,
either.
I'm in the zone, dude.
Right.
I don't even look at who's next to me, to be honest.
Okay. Right.
But so I'm at a dilemma on this thing of, do I just keep gearing it up and trying to make it work on 4S, or do I go back to 6S and just turn it way down and kind of sneak up on it? Because I always blew blew apart the rear diff and broke parts because I would have it turned way up and try to launch it all crazy. Where I'm pretty sure if I turned it way down, you know, turn my endpoint down to 20% to start with,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and sneak up, because this thing on, you know, on 68% on 6S was like the craziest I ever had it,
Yeah.
which isn't even close to 100%. But I also had a pretty high gear on it, you know. So there's a few things I could do to make it work better on 6S. There's also a few things I could do to make it faster on 4S. But I like the idea of 6S because it just got all that
It's
power
got a lot of power
on tap, you know, out the back end. So you could turn the launch way down and just
We
baby
just gotta
out
take
of
the power.
it.
We gotta take the paddles down a little bit.
Yeah,
That
that
would
will
be-
help, dude,
yeah.
because
Spool them up. a
them
little
being
bit.
so big
Yeah.
and so wide, it kind of acts like a
Yeah.
like a pendulum
Mhm.
or a fulcrum point right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gets set up and it just whap, you know,
Yeah.
you can't steer it. So
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
tucked those in as far as we could too. We did a couple.
yeah,
We
I
played
even-
with the offset on those quite
Yeah.
a bit, and it actually they were slapping the chassis. We moved them so far.
yeah, I had
So
to
far.
actually shave the chassis a little bit on those corners
Right.
to get them to clear.
'Cause
But I just
you were
love
bound and determined to run
Yeah.
those tires.
Yeah, and you got like millimeter, not even like paper business card clearance in between
Yeah.
the spring and there.
Right, and then under power and yeah, we.
I mean, it all
we-
works. It doesn't
Yeah.
hit each other, but it's as tight as you can get it.
Yeah,
pretty
there's
much,
no
you know?
there's no more room.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm kind of a freak when it comes to like how things look. They have
Mhm.
to look a certain way. Like they have to look cool as well as like work good.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that you could do that it might look goofy, but it works.
But it works.
You know? Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
And we've seen that.
Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah.
yeah, that you can't underestimate anybody that comes up there because some of the goofy stuff.
Oh yeah.
It works.
You never know.
You never know.
Yeah,
how
and
it's
it's same kind of trend on this car with the supports of the wheelie bar.
Mhm.
Same deal here, carbon fiber flat wheelie bar, little skags on here that just kind of dig down in the sand and help keep you going straight.
Yeah.
For Huntington, I like to run our suspension kind of loose, kind of gushy,
Yeah.
just because it can kind of move and deal with the holes and ruts and bumps
Right.
and stuff.
Pre-runner style.
Yeah, it's not perfectly smooth.
Right.
It's pretty smooth, but
Trophy truck.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
yeah,
And it really depends on our day. Some days we'll have a really smooth track, and
Yeah.
some days we don't.
Yeah.
So it really depends on how much we can actually groom the track and get it down there. So
yeah,
and it'll be interesting to see, when how things translate from Huntington to say Matus. I mean, I
Yeah.
think some of us will start going down, for the races down in Yuma and take this.
Yeah,
that
I'm
we've learned
really-
to the track. It'd
I'm
be
really
interesting to
curious.
see. I'd be curious to see how that translates over and
Yeah.
how the cars handle so much different on an actual track.
groom
on a
surface,
correct groom surface.
watered, yeah.
But you got to deal with half the width on the lanes.
Half the width and the shutdown
And
area
half,
too.
half the shutdown.
Yeah,
So, I
that's the part I'm nervous about. But I am really curious to know how my cars will do on that surface.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
I know they haul ass over here. So
yeah, it's
I-
fun. It's fun over there to watch them race and to see on that.
yeah, and because they have a timing system to
Right.
really see okay, I'm turn this sucker up all
Right.
the way and
Yeah,
send
Doesn't
it
make
for
a
one
difference.
pass, and if
Yeah.
I break something, then oh well. But
it's
If it goes,
interesting
it's gonna
because I saw that out there where you crank up the power and you start losing speed. You start losing timing.
yeah,
Right,
you
so-
blow the tires
Because you're just
off,
you're
or
overpowering.
overworking the motor.
Yeah.
It just hits
So then
its
you start
threshold.
dialing it down, and then
Mhm.
it's nice to have a timing system to where you can actually start playing with that,
Yeah.
and seeing where you're at. So,
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I mean, we use the little GPS deals, but those aren't super duper accurate. If you're trying to get accurate down to a 1/10 of a second every
Right.
time, like
Yeah.
you don't really want to solely go off of those.
they'll give you something.
Yeah,
They'll
give you a good
something
base,
good base,
a
to
pretty
go
close
off of.
number. Your
Right.
mile per hour. You see your acceleration G's and all that
Right.
in the graph, which is cool information to.
Yeah.
to
Yeah, I
look
know the
at.
no prep guys don't really rely on that too much anymore because they were dealing with such minute, fine details,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
thousands, and you can actually, trying to compensate for a problem that doesn't exist because the GPS just isn't keeping up.
Right.
So you're
Right,
You're
it
thinking
can't-
you're reading
it
one
can't
number, but it's
it can't compute it at
Right.
that that
Right.
level.
It doesn't have the frequency to
Mhm.
calculate that.
Mhm.
So awesome. All right. So one last thing I want to talk about a little bit. People that are watching this for the first time and seeing sand drags for the first time, what's the best way for someone to get started in this hobby? I mean, where do they start? I guess in that aspect of it.
Well, I mean, you kind of have to have like at least one other person to race.
Mhm.
So social media is like, a great tool that you can use nowadays, and just try to find something in your area. It is kind of a rare thing, but there's more tracks popping up, and
There's a lot of grassroots.
little groups.
Starting to pop up.
Yeah.
I noticed that with shipping tires out and selling tires. We got little guys in little neck of the woods.
Yeah,
in
a couple of their
Ohio
buddies get
and
together.
Texas,
Uh-huh,
and everyone's just
uh-huh.
getting together and they're grading some things.
Yeah,
so,
I know there's some guys
so-
in Washington
Yep.
that are doing a big race. There's some guys in Utah.
mhm.
You got us, the RC Sand Sharks, Huntington Beach.
Yeah, check out social media. Check out RC Sand Drags face group.
Yeah,
Facebook
Facebook is a
group.
good one.
That's a good group if you're on
RC Sand
Facebook.
Drags.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
That's kind of a good community and kind of posts bash maps on the app side of things. If you're looking for local areas, and local meetups,
Yeah, Bash Maps is cool.
they're popping up and starting to get a lot more traction, a lot more people subscribing. So they'll start posting events and areas of where you can go. Maybe people are just finding some patch of sand somewhere. They
Yeah.
do that in Yuma. They go
Yeah.
and they find some patch of sand. Lots
Me
of sand
and
down there.
him, dude, riding around for work. Like,
Right.
oh, did you see that sand
Right.
at that park over there?
Yeah.
Volleyball court.
Right.
We're gonna go hit that real quick.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
playground was pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate having the beach
Yeah.
here. 10
And year
minutes.
round driving. too.
year
That's-
round sand access,
Right.
because you can only get that at certain places in the
Yeah.
world. Sand
Yeah.
isn't like dirt where it's everywhere.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Unless
I
you're
mean,
building it,
I
trucking
think
it in.
I think some grass drags would be cool because
Yeah.
grass is everywhere.
Right. Exactly.
Develop some tires that hook up real good on grass and throw these things on there
Yep.
and see what they do.
And we're seeing the mud racing popping up actually. So that's a
Yeah.
big thing right now.
Mud
too.
racing. That's
The
cool.
mud
That's all
rides.
cool stuff.
Yeah, lots of cool stuff. So, all right, yeah, check out Facebook. Check out RCSandsharks.
Yeah, checks out rcsandsharks.com. Checks
we'll,
out on
we'll put some
Instagram.
links. Yeah, check out on Instagram and all the regular social medias. TikTok as long as it's around.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
AKRC products too. I repost a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to repost a lot of the sand drag stuff and focus mainly on sand drag stuff and
Yeah.
and
I mean, if
community
you have
stuff. So
If you don't have access to the internet, that's kind of tough,
Yeah.
I mean, your
Local
your
hobby
local
shops.
hobby shop's
Yeah,
probably
visit-
the best.
yeah, visit your local
Best
hobby
place.
shops and if there's nobody around, start something.
Yeah,
talk to your
yeah.
hobby
Be the
shops
organizer,
and
I mean,
start organizing.
once
Find a
once
place.
you do this and you get your car set up and you squeeze the trigger, you're gonna be hooked,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
hooked like crack. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it brings a lot of other people in, and all you got to do is get a couple of people, and then it snowballs from there. So
Yeah.
I've seen that, kind of
Yeah.
the grassroots movements, and these guys are putting on some pretty big races now.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of guys getting together. It's like grudge racing.
Yes.
Good
Good old
no
clean
light,
fun.
Yeah,
man.
no light, no nothing, just out
Uh-huh.
there, just ready, set, go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's-
I mean, when I'm up there racing these things, man, I get the same adrenaline rush as racing a real car. I
Yeah.
come back to the pit, I'm like, oh man, that was a good one.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So kids classes. As far as RC Sand Drags races in Huntington, we've got so many classes now. So we've got kids class, we've got stock 2-wheel drive class, which we've had, and and RTR class
Yep.
that we've added, and
110 RTR.
1/10 RTR
box
class.
stock.
Two-
Box stock.
Yeah, box stock 2-wheel drive
2-wheel drive.
RTR class.
Yep.
And then we've got 3S mod class. We've got 4-wheel drive.
4-wheel drive.
3S 4-wheel drive.
Yep.
Stock 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
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 3S 110 4-wheel
Yeah,
drive.
110 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
4 6S class.
Yeah, 4.6S, 8th scale and larger.
Yes.
Has to be 8th scale.
Yeah.
Can't come with the 10th scale on 6S, and
Right.
it's got to be 8th scale larger.
Yeah.
4 to 6S, and then we got Psycho class, which
Right.
is
Which is the fifth scale, quarter scale, fifth
1/6
scale,
1/6
One-
scale and
1/6
larger.
scale.
8S battery and up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the big class.
Yeah, that was
So,
the big
yeah.
guys.
Yeah, check out rcsandsharks.com's website, and we'll be posting a lot of the rules. We're refining a lot of the rules, and trying to figure out what works. We're trying to race it with as little rules as we can, but we find that that doesn't necessarily.
We're
work.
trying to figure out the rules
Yeah.
that we want to make
Fair.
stick.
Right.
Because the biggest thing is trying to keep the races fair. That's my biggest thing
Right.
with all of it is keep everyone in their right categories, the right classes, the right scales. Keep the races fair.
Keep it fun. Fair and fun.
But keep the rules to a minimum. As long as you're within the guidelines, go crazy. Like I want to see some people show up with some stuff that.
Yeah, there's a limit to that. As soon as somebody pushes the rules a little too far one way, then you gotta create a rule for it, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But
I mean that's how it goes.
That's how it goes.
But I mean, screw it, bend the rules a little bit. Like make us create that rule.
And we've had that.
Yeah.
We've dealt with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it'll evolve, and as we'll dial it down a little bit. But right now we're trying to make it to where whatever you have, you pretty much have a class for it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you got an RC car and you got, some paddle tires, you can come race. I mean, shit, you don't even really have to have paddle tires.
Right, no, you don't have to.
But
and we've seen guys run no paddles, and they just paddle themselves down the track.
Yep.
So you can do it.
Yeah, but basic setup, you definitely at least want paddle tires, and you definitely want some kind of wheelie bar.
Yeah.
I use carbon fiber for all my stuff, but you could use, a yardstick or
sheet of aluminum, piece of wood.
Yeah.
We've seen guys go out and take
a measuring
quarter-inch
stick or something, and
quarter-inch piece of plywood. And
you
cut
can
that
double
or,
side stick tape it to the bottom. You just want to make sure it's straight in line with the car. You don't want it crooked because that will make you drive crooked.
Yep. Bolt on Traxxas wheelie bars on the back.
Yeah, you can do that too. Drag slash wheelie bars. You want to have something flat on it though, if you can. If you're in sand, not dirt, it probably wouldn't matter so much. But sand, when you get the ladder style bars, they kind of dig into the sand and that slows you down.
But I've seen that. I saw a guy in Long Beach that did that, and he just had the ladders there, and that thing would stand up and just go straight.
Yeah.
It was like a rudder.
Yeah.
It's just straight.
Yeah, the main thing is that crossbar. If there's no crossbar,
take the crossbar
straight,
out. Just the straight ladders without the crossbar.
Yeah, but if it's got that crossbar, it just digs in the sand and
so awesome.
plows it.
All right, well, thank you everyone for watching. And, any questions, hit us up, and then we'll keep posting these. We're gonna do a couple of these features, hopefully, get some other racers and look at their setups and get some advice and
anybody's got any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out. You guys can all DM me or whatever. I'm an open book on information.
Anywhere this is posted, comment on the video and what you'd like to see next, maybe, or some more information that we didn't cover that you might like to see. Comment, and then we'll try to put that in the next video.
All right.
Awesome. All right, thank you.